Hey everybody, it's Helen Hill, ex-intuitive counselor and your host from My Heart to Yours. And today I have a very interesting special guest who is my daughter, Rebecca Hillix Garcia.
Hello.
And I'm so happy to have her on the show. I'll talk a little bit more later. We'll get into the depth, but Rebecca will be 2 years clean from heroin in a week. And, it makes me cry just to even think about it because I thought she would die. And I wanted her to be on the show, not because she's an expert in addiction treatment or anything like that, but because she is one of the, what I understand is like 2% of people who actually stay in recovery from heroin. And I'm not saying that it'll be for the rest of her life, you never know. And I don't want to be presumptuous, but I feel incredibly hopeful and so excited about her life and the new challenges that she faces. So I'd like to introduce Rebecca, and I know that she's going to inspire a lot of people listening who maybe are still using and don't believe they can get clean, or maybe parents like me who didn't know what to do and did a lot of stupid things. And I just want her to tell her story, and then we'll dive deep into all different kinds of questions. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your story. I know you don't want to focus on the past part, but give us a little bit of background so people get an idea of what you've been through.
Okay. I was born in Ramona, and my parents got a divorce when I was about 3. I believe that I was born a drug addict. I remember, sneaking my stepdad's cigarettes like super, super young, and they were all moldy and gross and wet. And I remember thinking it was like, I liked it. I liked whatever that was. And just feeling like I didn't fit in even when I was a very young kid. And
That's okay.
My parents got divorced when I was about 3. And my mom raised me pretty much. My dad was in and out of the picture a little bit. And I loved him, but he just wasn't around. I started drinking and smoking pot when I was in high school. And that kind of progressed pretty quickly. I graduated high school, and I was, I'd say, pretty much addicted to Oxycontin at that point. I tried a lot of different things to, move or stop hanging out with these people because I had kind of known that it was a problem. So I was actively using heroin around 20 and
smoking it, right?
Right, I was smoking it at that point. And my cousin overdosed of heroin at the same time as around that time. And instead of waking me up and realizing that maybe I was going down the wrong path, I just went harder. And I don't really have that good of a memory about a lot of my life. I know that I used heroin for most of that time. I know that I was in and out of treatment centers because at that point I had come clean about using heroin. And I remember being sent to LA to go into treatment, where I didn't stay clean. I just used in LA. I lived in LA. I was far enough away from my family so where they didn't know. I ended up moving to Huntington Beach. By this time, I'm just an absolute wreck. I'm shooting heroin. It had become everything to me. I knew, or I thought at that point that this was my destiny, that I was just going to die a heroin addict. And it consumed every aspect of my life. I lived a double life for years.
What does that mean?
That I became really good at hiding everything. That I I knew that in order to continue doing drugs, that I had to pretend that everything was okay, keep working, say that I was good, and then, go shoot heroin. So in order for me to continue with that, I had to become really good at lying because I wanted to keep doing it.
Well, one of the things that I want to make sure people hear about that is, because this was something that really fooled me, was the fact that you worked a full-time job and a challenging, challenging job. And I thought, just as naive as I was about heroin, that, you couldn't possibly be a junkie if you were working full-time. So I just wanted to throw that out to make sure that family members and friends of people that they suspect might be using are not fooled by that fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Some people don't, and some people do. And I knew that in order to do that forever, I had to come up with a way to pay for everything. So.
And it wasn't going to be prostitution like it is for some people.
Yeah, right.
So did you hit rock bottom, and what was that?
Yeah, so I was living, I knew that something was wrong when I was living in Orange County. At this point, I'd been shooting heroin for years, and I didn't have any veins anymore. And so I was muscling it and skin popping. So this is, people that use or have used would understand that it causes abscesses, and they're incredibly painful and they're dangerous. And I was deteriorating super quickly. And my rock bottom eventually, after another couple of years of doing that, was ending up in the hospital with sepsis. But I guess that was my emotional rock bottom, but I still didn't stop after that. I continued to use because I thought that I was healed, that everything was okay. Like, okay, well, that's in the past. Like, I got sick. Now I'm healthy. Now I'm going to continue to use. But I just couldn't keep up. I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. It was just so draining. I was just so tired of doing it all the time. I was absolutely exhausted of living that life for so long. It's the only life that I had ever known. And I was just tired. And so I went into the McDonald's Center and I got clean there. I stayed there for 30 days and it totally changed my life. I don't know if it was just because I was ready, but I was ready. I was. And I wasn't super great when I was there. I wasn't the best client ever, but towards the end I was. And I still have relationships with some of those people. And it was the best thing that I have ever done. It was incredible. So
I remember when you were there, I agree with you about you weren't the best student at the beginning, but, by the end you were totally into it. And I think one of the things that you said at the time that was so helpful to you is that they immediately began taking you out places that were fun and showing you that sobriety could be fun. Mm-hmm. And that was something you never thought. You never thought that sobriety could be fun, which is mind-boggling. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a bunch of different treatment centers before, and they weren't anything like that. I mean, we had they were very scheduled, and our outing for the day was a meeting. And I'm not saying anything bad about those treatment centers. I mean, they absolutely work for a lot of people. And for me, I had such a routine for so many years of not doing anything fun, just being on the grind all the time. And so for them to take us to the beach or take us to the meditation gardens, that was rad. It was like, okay, wow, I can actually do things, It was like I don't have any abscesses all over my body anymore. I can actually wear a bathing suit or like, you know, just do fun things and go in the water. And just becoming myself, learning who I was, what I like to do, you know, making friends, you know, not being a secret anymore. I didn't have to keep any secrets. I didn't have to live that double life anymore.
That must have been an unbelievable relief to not have to live a double life,
Yeah.
to not have to keep any secrets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've talked about that on different Facebook Lives, and, you know, I don't think I've done a podcast on it yet, but I will, because shame and secret keeping are so closely aligned and so incredibly painful.
Yeah.
I mean, they say in AA that secrets kill, and it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're keeping secrets, you are not able to be engaged in life, really. So I know that was a huge relief to you at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about what it was like getting clean. I mean, did you feel physically well immediately? I mean, what was the...
No, I mean, after I got out of the hospital, I went into detox, and then I was only using for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, and then I went into treatment. So I had done most of my detoxing in the hospital. But when I got there, I think I still ended up detoxing. I didn't feel, I remember this actually, yeah, I wasn't well when I got into the McDonald's Center, and I definitely felt awful. And it took me a few days, maybe even a week to start feeling better. But I was just honest about it, you know, and other people there could totally relate to me. And even that goes back to like me just being me. If I didn't feel good, like that was okay. And I could be honest about why I didn't feel good. You know, it wasn't me trying to like keep up this persona that everything's fine.
What do you think about Suboxone and other things like that? I know you were on it.
Mm-hmm. I was on it for, I don't know, 1.5 years, maybe more. In the beginning stages when I was pretty young, they put me on it, harm reduction. And I feel like it's just a Band-Aid to not doing the work to get really sustainable like recovery. My big problem with it is they put you on it in treatment centers typically, and then you leave treatment and you're still on this drug. And in order to get off the drug, you have to detox. And so at what point are you going to detox off that drug? Is it going to be in a detox? Or are you going to try and do it at home? And when I did it, I detoxed at home having no idea, and it was absolutely awful. It was worse than kicking heroin. And I ended up going back to heroin, I don't know, a month later or something like that. So it didn't work for me. I mean, if you're going to stay on it for the rest of your life or something, I don't know if people do that, but for me, I would not recommend it for someone close to me, but that's just me.
Yeah, like we said, you're not an expert, but this is your story, and that's what you're saying, that you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I have had clients who were on methadone or Suboxone for years and years and years, and my observation is I agree with you that it gives a false sense of security, and people don't do the work. They don't want to do the work because they've got something that'll keep them from using, and that's all they want.
Yeah, I feel like in recovery, working like I'm in AA, doing the 12 steps, I feel like you have to be in a certain amount of pain in order to do the steps, to get some relief from that process. And I feel like Suboxone, I don't think that I necessarily got in that amount of pain to do the steps. It was just kind of like a Band-Aid. It was just kind of this numbing thing that I can continue on not using, but not doing any work. And when I got into treatment and started working the steps, I was in a huge amount of pain, and I wanted some relief from that.
Physical, emotional, spiritual?
Emotional and spiritual, yeah.
Do you want to talk about that? I mean, what kind of pain? Shame, fear? Everything.
Yeah, I mean,
Anger.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what to say about that, except for when you know, like when you're in it, you can identify what feeling that is. I don't know if I can necessarily describe it to someone who it's just desperation, I guess. Just desperation and hopelessness and just hoping, like wanting something to relieve pain.
Yeah, which I think is interesting because it's interesting that it's hard to describe. And it's interesting because that's my understanding of addiction in general, is that we all go into addictions, whether it's food, sex, gambling, shopping, drugs, alcohol, it's all to cover up pain. So whatever, doesn't, in a way, it doesn't matter which pain it is, because that's the basis. Is in our society, we are not really taught well how to cope with pain. We don't talk about it in the school system. We don't have groups that talk about how are you feeling and how can I support you. And so it's a mess. And I think until our whole society changes, we're not going to get rid of addiction. So you mentioned harm reduction. Do you have anything else to say about that before we move on?
No.
Okay.
Suboxone and that kind of stuff? No.
Yeah, or, places where you can get clean needles. I mean, isn't all of that harm reduction?
Well, yeah, I don't know if that's harm reduction. I definitely agree with the needle exchanges. I mean, I think that it supports, I mean, I remember when I was doing that, I lived in an area where there was only one place to get them and they were always out. And when you don't have clean needles, that just causes, like for me, it was just not good decisions that I was making because I couldn't get clean needles. And so I feel like if they were readily available to people who were actively using, it's like some people are against birth control because it's like you think that it's supporting them into having more sex. It's just like you're already going to do it, you
Right.
might as well make it safe.
Yeah.
So
let's ask, what is life like now?
Life now,
or maybe in the whole last 2 years, I'm sure it's been a progression of different phases.
yeah, absolutely. Getting out of treatment was something that I'd never experienced before. It was terrifying leaving treatment, but at that point I had made a really good support system. And I moved in immediately to a sober living, no questions. I knew that living on my own or with anybody else was not, just wouldn't have worked. So I immediately went into a sober living. I lived in a sober living. I went to 1 or 2 meetings every day. I was constantly around sober people. And I did that for the first year. I slowly incorporated work and starting to live life again and having fun and just being sober and what that was like. Could I do it? Could I not do it? I'm getting stressed out. What do I do? Who do I call? And just kind of figuring all of that out. And the second year has been better, but I'm at this place now where it's like, okay, I can be sober. I get that. Like I love being sober. I love the life that it's given me, but I expected that I was going to die a drug addict. I didn't think that I would live this life. And so now I am like, what do I want to do? Who do I want? Like, what do I do? Do I want to go back to school? Like, it's just all of these things that I never dreamed possible for myself. And now it's like, holy shit, I have to actually do them. Like, have to actually do these things. And it's a blessing. Like, it's a huge blessing. And it's also something that I've absolutely never experienced, nor did I ever think that I would experience. But I have a lot of love and support And that's what I go to now, is the people in my life, the relationships in my life, the women in my life who totally understand and have been sober longer than I have. And it's just, that's my life. I have tons of connection. I have a wonderful relationship. I have my family again in my life. I have a job. I have a home. Like, it's things that I never thought that I would have. And yeah, I'm grateful to live this life. And it definitely was not easy. It was not easy, but I was desperate enough to do something different because I knew that I couldn't live that life anymore. And once I just surrendered to the fact that, like, okay, I can't anymore. That there's this whole other way of life that I didn't think was possible.
It's so interesting to me talking to different, my podcast last week, is with a guy who's been sober for a while, and he's, I hear it over and over again. I never thought it was possible for me. I never thought it was possible for me. And it makes me so sad, that hopelessness that sinks in after a while. But, it's real. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, is because even people who are out there, and I know there are so many heroin addicts out there, opiate addicts, and all other kind of addicts, who believe that it's not possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's similar to other things. It's like, like you were saying, gambling, food, sex. Like, if you try and try and try for years and years and years, like authentically just trying your absolute hardest, and you just can't get there or do it, it's like at some point it's hopeless.
You feel hopeless.
Right, you feel hopeless. And I just feel very grateful and blessed that I was able to actually do it. And I know it wasn't me. It was definitely, my higher power, the universe, community, connection. But at that point, when I've tried everything, that I can think of, just, I don't know what to do anymore. There's just like this state of hopeless. And I saw other people that were sober. I saw other people doing it, like, wow, that must be nice, wow, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
But it just never worked until it did.
Well, and I'm so glad you mentioned all the other addictions. I've been struggling with food all my life, off and on. And I think it's an important thing to put out there to people who are listening to this show, because a lot of parents think, oh my God, I would never do that while they smoke their cigarettes or while they're eating their sugar. So it's like we are in denial so much about what an addiction is. And I'm glad you brought us back to that point that, almost everybody has some kind of an addiction. And so it's an inspiring story that you have. And what do you do to maintain your recovery now?
Well, I'm doing the steps for a second time. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe for me that was the only way. I have a higher power that works in my life today, because if it were up to me, I would definitely still be shooting heroin. I think it's an absolute miracle that I have a life and that I am alive. And I know that's just not me. It's just not possible. So I definitely believe in a higher power. And I go to meetings. Like I said, I'm working my steps again. I have a lot of amazing women in my life that I can turn to about absolutely anything. I am completely, I just love them. I would absolutely be lost without them. Just, having that understanding and just having so much fun together. I mean, that is my life. I have an amazing sober fiance. I have amazing sober friends. I have a wonderful family. My life is very disconnected from drugs at this point. Like, it's me navigating through life, staying sober, going to meetings, doing my steps, like doing all the things that I need to do. to maintain that. And also, you know, I don't know.
And you have a sponsor, right?
I do.
And you think that's an important part of it, is having that person to guide you through the steps? I mean, how important do you think that is?
Well, if you're going to be in AA, you need a sponsor.
If you're going to really work the program.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're just going to show up at a meeting and say hi, you know, or listen, you know, it's part of the AA program to have a sponsor. You can't work the steps by yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that point. And the community, you know, that you're talking a lot about community and how important that is. And of course, I so believe in that. And again, in the whole area of healing anything, I think community is so essential.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are really lonely. You know, a lot of people are just lonely. And I'm very grateful today that I am a drug addict, a recovering heroin addict, that I have this built-in community and family and friends all around me, that like I'm never alone. I have love and support all around me. And I feel very grateful now that this is my life, and that I went through all of that hell, because I can't imagine not having that. I mean, I can imagine it because I didn't have it for a long time. But now that it is so built into my life, it's just like, I can't imagine not having it.
You know, the whole story from, you were saying that you believe you were born an addict. You weren't born addicted to drugs, but you were born with that mentality, that physical makeup, mental makeup to love addictive qualities or love addictive behaviors. You just were attracted to them. And that's what you mean, right? The overdoing of things. And
what I mean by that is, I don't think that if my mom would have done something different, or my dad would have been there, or, you know, I was raised in a different place, or if my dad had been a lawyer, like, I don't think any of those outside things made me an addict. I believe that I've always been this way, and that eventually I decided to use drugs and alcohol. Or, you know, I could have had an addictive personality towards something else. But I don't believe that, you know, if I would have been raised differently, because people have all kinds of different stories, you know, and ultimately they are all addicts and alcoholics. So I don't think that one thing would have made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one guy that you knew in treatment who died, you know, shortly afterwards. Came from a very religious family. And, you know, it's just more, I'm just kind of agreeing with what you're saying, that it's on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I wanted to emphasize that, because even someone who has a story like yours, that realizes early in life that you felt different, that now, you know, you're 30 years old, you're almost 2 years clean, and life is completely different. Now you do feel like you belong. Mm-hmm. Now you know, it's a completely different experience, but it started out so painfully, and yet there is a happy story at the end. You know, people with that kind of painful feeling that they don't belong, or that there's nobody there is going to understand them, and all of that. I just want to really emphasize that it's not true, that you can find a place to belong, and a community that will support you, that really sees you and understands what you've been through, and will support you and welcome you with open arms. What do you think about other programs besides the 12-step programs? Have you seen people get sober in them? And
I mean, I've heard stories of people just stopping, but I don't know any personally. I don't know about, it's not my experience. I have no idea. For me, that wouldn't work. I can't moderate my using. I can't, this was the only thing, and I've known for so long that about AA, and I've seen so many people that their lives have been changed from it. But yeah, I don't know of any I know people do it. I don't know if that would have worked for me, because like I said, I guess it's possible for people to just stop and then they just stop. But why, I don't know why I would want to do that when I could have this whole spiritual experience and, community and friends, and really be shifted on the inside and do the hard work from like trauma and, do all of that stuff to actually change myself and to become a new person, instead of just stopping and then just being angry that I'm not using.
I love that. I just love that, because you're really speaking to the essence, and a lot of people say that AA doesn't work very well. And I don't know what the statistics are really. I hope that they'll come up with better and better kinds of treatment programs. I really do. And I think they're always shifting and growing and more holistic now, certainly than they used to be. In, like you were saying about even going out and having fun and doing yoga and, all kinds of holistic integration of the programs. But what you were saying about, even if something is effective in terms of getting people off of drugs, why would anyone choose that when they could have a program that changes their whole way of being, and body, mind, and spirit, and helps you heal from traumas? And you are on the road to an incredibly full, rich life, that all these people who either they just stay on Suboxone. This one guy I'm thinking of, he stays on Suboxone, he still drinks alcohol, has a horrible relationship, because he hasn't changed. He just got on the Suboxone to get off the opiates, but he hasn't changed his life. And that's what I think is such an incredible, powerful thing about the 12 steps.
Yeah, but see the difference. You asked me, why would someone do that? It's because it doesn't take any work.
I get it.
Right. I mean, someone can get on Suboxone, someone can stop drinking, and that's it. There's nothing to it, but it takes a ton of work to go through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. For me, it was life-changing. And so that's the difference, is that if you're willing to do it and willing to go through it, then you can have a spiritual experience. But you can't just walk into the doctor and say, hey, prescribe me this, and have a spiritual experience. It just doesn't work.
Right. I just think that people don't realize the joy and the freedom and the adventure and the fun that they get to have through the 12-step complete inner revolution, as opposed to somebody that's just going to stop using. And I want to emphasize that, because people that are listening, I really want you to get that you can have it all. You don't just have to settle for having a dry, what they call a dry life, without the drug, that you can have all of it, but only, like you were saying, if you're willing to dive deep and do the work. But it's so worth it.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely worth it. I mean, you have to want it. Nobody's going to come to you with it. You have to be ready and willing to acknowledge what's going on and not be in denial and do something about it.
Yeah. So what would you say to addicts that are still suffering?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible to get clean and sober. I feel like they already know that.
Well, but you know what? Not always. I don't think they do. So I think your voice added to other people saying that is a help, because you've told them what your story was, with abscesses all over your body and going to the hospital with 105 fever, and they, were scared to death you were going to die and couldn't find any veins to give you antibiotics. I mean, it's like, you have a pretty gnarly story, and here you are today. So I appreciate that you're saying it's possible, it's possible. And what would you say to the friends and family? I know you would say, don't give up because it's possible. Do you have any other suggestions that you've heard of or that you've experienced that you'd like to share with them?
No, the only thing I can say is go to Al Anon. I mean, if you have a loved one, a spouse, someone that you have in your life that's addicted to drugs, go to Al Anon. They know what to do. It's just a whole, I mean, I didn't go through that, so I don't know. But I think that Al Anon is absolutely where spouses and parents should be.
Okay. I remember one time I interviewed you for a radio show or something, and you said the one piece of advice that you would give families is don't give them cash.
Mm-hmm.
And, just recently somebody called me and, supposedly they're sober, but, they keep asking for grocery money.
Mm-hmm. Buy them groceries.
Exactly. That's what I said. Buy them groceries. Don't give them a dime of cash. Mm-hmm. Because, the reason they don't have any money for groceries is because they're using it on drugs probably. So.
Yeah. I mean, we never know, but if, that's why I say go to Al Anon, because they'll teach you what to do. Because I know from living that life is that we're very sneaky. Very, very sneaky. I had no idea what a great liar you were until after you got sober and I heard about some of the things. But so I heard this once a long time ago when I used to work in a rehab, that one of the family members in this group, support group for the recovering people that were in this program, asked another family member, well, how do you know when they're lying? How do you know when they're lying? And all of us, including myself, leaned forward. And this guy said, you don't know how to tell? And everybody leaned forward. We couldn't wait to hear what he was going to say. And he said, if their lips are moving. And everybody burst into laughter. I'd never heard that before, but it's so true. And, it's such a prevalent thing. So I completely want to support what you're saying. Go to Al Anon. You cannot tell if they're lying. Trust me, you cannot tell. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So anything else you want to say to the audience? Any final words? I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on here and talking about drug addiction, because it's not something that we need to keep a secret anymore. Everybody knows somebody or, has someone in their family that's addicted to drugs nowadays. And I feel like we should be talking about it and finding solutions for it and, having more treatment options, long-term treatment, really coming together to find a solution. Okay, and you would just recommend that people go to AA or some kind of treatment program or Al Anon or get support. Mm-hmm. Get support. Yep. And I think that there's so much shame around the whole addiction topic that it tends to make us isolate. Mm-hmm. So I am all in favor of that. So thank you so much for sharing your story today. And I love you so much, and I'm so incredibly proud of you. And thank you for the encouragement that you are giving to our audience today. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Love you. Love you.